everyone, and welcome to the Burgess podcast, the show where we are opening up conversations about life at sea, discussing hot topics within the industry, as well as offering mental health support and promoting well-being for crew. We also have our very own in-house recruitment team, so if you or anyone you know is currently looking for a new position, please send your updated CV to recruitment@burgessyachts.com or check out our recruitment posts on Instagram @Burgess Yacht Crew. Hi, my name's Lorena and welcome to the Burgess Yacht Crew podcast. For our series on sustainability, we have been talking about ocean pollution, topics such as microplastics, waste management and sunscreens. Today we're going to be talking about wastewater, specifically wastewater maintenance, treatment systems and the products that we use which end up in our wastewater and the impact this can have on our oceans and the marine life. And to help me with the details, we are welcoming back our very own Burgess Blue Oceans team. Today we have Georgina, Eva, Alex, Elliott and Tash. So we're going to be looking at two areas today, wastewater management and the products that we use on board. Let's start with wastewater management. Elliott, what are the issues with wastewater?
Well, the main issue is what to do with it once it's accumulated in the ship's tank. So what's happening all day, every day, is grey water and black water is accumulating. So all the water that passes down any sink drains, shower drains, dishwasher outlet, washing machines, all toilets, eventually it ends up in the ship's holding tanks. And then you have to discharge it if you're not in port at the reception facilities. So that's the issue really in terms of sustainability, is this discharge into the sea. Everything that's going down the drains on a yacht or a ship mostly ends up in the sea.
So just for my knowledge, black water is, I understand, is toilet waste?
That's correct, yes. Or on some of the big yachts, they may have an infirmary and the medical sink, and that goes to black water. But in general, absolutely right, just the toilets.
And grey water is wastewater from the onboard sinks, showers, washing machines. My understanding is that that's discharged directly into the sea. Is that right?
It is. At the moment, grey water is largely unregulated. And because it's unregulated, you can pump it directly overboard in most areas.
That doesn't sound very pleasant. And I imagine can do a lot of harm, Eva, to the marine life.
So yeah, it's a huge issue. To give you a rough idea on some of the larger quantities we're dealing with, around 773 tonnes per day per cruise liner are released into the sea. So both types of wastewater can damage ecosystems if discharged into aquatic environments. Firstly, the key nutrients in grey water can be harmful and can fuel harmful algae blooms, otherwise known as HAB, which cause mass ecosystem dysfunction, producing toxins, blocking sunlight, and clogging fish gills. After the bloom dies, the process of decomposition can then consume locally available oxygen, creating marine dead zones, which basically kill most of the marine life in these zones. So it is quite serious.
It is, yeah. It sounds awful. So what are the regulations? Are there regulations that yachts have to meet for wastewater management?
Yes, there are. IMO has set this out quite clearly through MARPOL. And in terms of wastewater, that's Annex 4, which lists a pretty clear set of instructions when you can and cannot discharge treated sewage and untreated sewage.
Okay. And that covers both grey and black water, or just black water?
Just black water at the moment.
Wow. So there are no regulations around discharging grey water?
Outside of special areas, local restrictions always take precedence. For example, Baltic Sea is a special area. But on the whole, we're talking about yachts in the Mediterranean and Caribbean. There's no grey water regulations.
That's surprising, isn't it? Is that something that maybe needs to be talked about with the authorities?
Well, there's definitely a case to be made. Eva just mentioned a few of the issues related to grey water and grey water discharge into the ocean. So it would seem sensible that there's at least a conversation about whether it should be limited or restricted.
Yeah. And do we know if these conversations are being had, Georgina?
I don't know if the conversations are being had, and we'll always defer to some of the senior guys and girls in the team who have worked in those organisations or a bit closer to it. But what I was just going to add was that where you do see restrictions in terms of cruising or anchoring or larger yachts visiting areas, like, for example, Northern Corsica or the Italian archipelago, the sea and the marine environment does have an incredible ability to regenerate itself, clean itself, for marine habitats to come back to life, given sort of half a chance. And clearly there are multiple impacts, whether it's the effects of, wastewater, or whether it's the effects of anchoring and so on and so forth. But where those environments are given a chance to recover, the results are phenomenal. There are huge areas now in the Med where, you just don't see marine life anymore. I sailed from the south of France to Greece this summer, and we saw pockets in areas where there were, no take zones, or where there were cruising restrictions or discharge restrictions. Life is as it should be underwater, but there are other areas where there really is very little. So it is worth, with all these things, just giving marine life a chance, in a way, giving those habitats half a chance to restore and come back to life. So if the conversations aren't being had, it would be great to see them being had. And in the meantime, probably leading on to where you were going to go next, Lorena, in the meantime, it's up to all of us to be responsible with what we're doing.
Yeah, so this kind of leads on to what are the options? What are the options for yachts when it comes to wastewater management?
Where possible, I think the best option is to discharge to a shore reception facility. I think we spoke about this on another podcast, but unfortunately not all ports have reception facilities, but if they do, they should be used. Perhaps we should be making a list of the marinas that don't, and maybe these marinas can be contacted and queried, why do you not have a reception facility?
Yeah, I think we talked about that in the earlier podcast, didn't we, about compiling a list of the facilities available at different marinas. So maybe that is something that can be added. Georgina, did you have any thoughts on that?
I was just going to say, I guess, in terms of what we're talking about now and, who's listening, it's one of these things where we're talking about sort of the most efficient and the easiest way through for some very, very busy people. We all know how hard crew are working to keep the boat going, to keep the boat looking fantastic, to keep it in the shape that owners and charter clients expect. And being able to think through multiple options or research multiple options, I'm guessing, isn't always, top of the list when you've got a really full-on day job to get through as well, night job to get through as well. So I guess it's a question of, yes, finding out what's available, and maybe we can start looking into a list of, or actually getting recommendations from the guys and girls on the boats in terms of what's available and what works and where is doing well. But then also, looking at what can be done on the boats in terms of products, wastewater treatment systems. Elliott, I guess from a commercial perspective, there was more going on the large ships than there is available on yachts.
That's definitely correct. Yes. I think generally on yachts, we have a comminuting and disinfecting system. This is for black water, which is quite basic. You take your sewage, add some seawater, mix it up, add some chlorine, discharge it overboard. That's a very basic overview. On a larger ship, you might have an advanced wastewater treatment system, which is far more complex. There's a lot more work to do for the onboard engineers. It takes up more space in the engine room. But the result is clear effluent that's really not far off clear, clean water. So it certainly has its advantages. I was actually in touch with the manufacturer of these quite recently, and he said that they have installed them on some yachts, but the smallest yacht they've installed them on was still over 100 meters. So I think there's considerations about the amount of work on board to keep the thing going, and space, of course. But they do exist. It's in smaller versions. I think the smallest version they have is suitable for 33 people on board, and it's basically in two different units, and each is about 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter, so 2 cubic meters of space. And the good thing about the new ones that are coming out is you can switch off the complicated side of the system, so it wouldn't always be running in that way all the time. You could have it running in its basic function, and then when needed or when appropriate, you could switch it on to make the clear, clean effluent, if that makes sense.
So, I mean, we'll do a summary at the end of what the solutions are, if any. But before we do, can we talk quickly about the second part of the podcast, which is about the products that we use on board, which you mentioned earlier, Elliott, that anything that goes down a sink, a shower, a toilet ultimately ends up in the sea and then directly impacts marine life from fish to seagrass. So we need to be looking, I guess, at the products that are used on board, in terms of, the most environmentally safe, the most efficient, and the volume of the products that we use.
I will again defer to the likes of Tash and Alex, who have run big boats and know how much they have to get through. But yeah, I think it's important to just be mindful of the quantity of stuff that's being loaded onto boats to then be used in keeping boats as smart as they're expected to be. But, there's probably a balance also to be struck between all the chemical cleaners and all the biological cleaners. And happy to, come back and touch on some of the companies that we know are doing some great work in this space. But maybe Tash or Alex want to sort of talk through some of the challenges they've had on board in terms of just keeping a boat up and running when guests are on and off constantly and crew are flat out.
Yeah, I'm happy to sort of talk about my experience on the deck side of things. I mean, there certainly isn't a lot of emphasis on grey water that goes down the sinks. You're mindful of the black water and of garbage separations and where you dispose of it, etc., etc. But certainly from my experience, it's down the sink and it's kind of out of the way or it's overboard. And in fact, decks are cambered to ensure that water does rush away off the decks so you don't have water sitting on top of the decks for stability reasons. So by very nature of the design of the yacht, everything kind of gets pushed overboard or down the scuppers, etc., etc. And only when you're bunkering do you ever plug up those scuppers to make sure that you don't, if you have an accidental discharge of fuel. So, everything is sort of very much encouraged to go overboard. And, it's that mentality. You're mixing some chemicals or you're scrubbing the decks and you've got a bit left over, so you do just sort of throw it in a sink or throw it over the side. And the product that springs to my mind, which is immediately very harmful, are as a sort of two-step process of scrubbing the decks, which is an alkaline and an acid that's used together to initially break down the dirt on a teak deck, clean it, and then you need to brighten it back up again because the first stage makes it quite dull with an acid. Teak naturally degrades and it's supposed to weather and look grey, but that's not the aesthetics. That's not the beauty that everyone wants to see. It's got to be clean, shiny, bright decks, and in order to achieve that, you end up using some fairly nasty chemicals. Now, in theory, the manufacturers say, well, you use one chemical and you make sure that's washed away and diluted and you don't use too much, etc., etc. And then once that's dried and done, you use the second stage and make sure that's fully diluted and scrubbed and carefully, and yes, block up the scuppers and make sure there's lots and lots of water before it ultimately goes overboard. But if you've got tight turnarounds, or if there's been a spillage from a dinner party or a party, yes, get off for a bit and you quickly go to work with some acid, you scrub it, or you use both products back to back without diluting it as much as you should do. That also achieves a slightly better finish too. So you think, well, I want to make it look good, so maybe I use a little bit more of the acid this time round. And yeah, you scrub away and then it just goes straight overboard. And again, you can see the damage that it can do to the stainless bollards and the bits and the apparatus around the yacht, even the hull, as it runs over the side and out the freeing ports. You always want to be rinsing it and washing it because the damage it will do. I mean, some of the acid actually burns the stainless, and you have to then go back over and sort of polish it. We used to have a system on one of the boats I worked on where we had a garden sprinkler that was, I suppose, oscillating underneath a stainless stairwell, because if you're scrubbing the deck above and the acid was washing down the stainless, it'd be hours of work to try and keep this stainless stairwell looking polished. So it's incredibly strong. So I digress slightly, but it's very potent stuff. So I can only imagine once it goes in the sea and overboard, the damage it can do. But again, it's coming back to the pressures of making the yacht look good and, you know, saving time. And if you can throw harsher chemicals at it to shave an hour off to achieve what you want to achieve, so that you've got time to go and do something else, you ultimately will, which is certainly not the right mentality, absolutely. And then there are chemicals and products out there, or companies, should I say, that are, you know, producing environmentally friendly. The problem with that, sometimes they're not as good, but certainly the right direction. And again, I suppose it's monitoring expectations of clients and guests on board. To, if it doesn't have to be super shiny, then it doesn't matter, and half the time they won't notice. But there isn't quite so much focus, I would say, you know, care or attention as what goes down the sink.
That's what these chats are about, though, isn't it? We're never going to achieve perfection until the products are easily available for crew, that do have the impact that the yachts are looking for, are easy to use, are easy to buy. And Tash, I guess, just from your perspective, grey water, my understanding is that it's also water that comes from washing machines and sinks, which can include fats, detergents, you know, so they are other factors that have to be considered. But how easy is it to buy the non-damaging, chemical-free products?
I think from the interior side, we're a little bit luckier than exterior in the fact that we don't have the harsh environment to work in. So inside, we're sort of really focusing on bacteria, keeping it clean and removing fingerprints. So if you sort of break down what we're cleaning and what products that we actually need to use, then we can take it straight back to the source of something really basic, which is your vinegar and alcohols, bicarb soda, all those sorts of things, which ultimately do the job that all these labelled products do, which you can buy in bulk and are better for the seas. I think for me as a stewardess, when I first joined yachting, I did not think about what I was flushing down. I was told to clean with these products. This is my caddy. It's loaded up with this stuff, and this is how we do it. You just didn't think about it. And it wasn't until I went to see a homeopath in New Zealand, and she said, you know, your body, no wonder you're running the way you are at the moment, because your body has got really high fire retardant in it. And I was like, that's strange. Where would I get that from? And she said, I think you should go and look at the chemicals that you're using on a day-to-day basis and see if there's anything that's in that has a fire retardant in it. And so I did. And it was one of the daily chemicals we use to wipe the walls. Every single day I was absorbing it through my hands. So I can only think what was happening as we washed down these buckets of leftover down the sink. You didn't really think about it. So from that one little piece of information, I thought, you know what? I need to change what's in this caddy. So when I became a chief stew, one of the things I looked at doing with my second stew was changing the bottles that we grab on a day-to-day basis. And we started topping them up and mixing them with water. So we would have a vinegar bottle, we would have an alcohol bottle, and then we would have a dishwashing bottle. And within that little kit, you can do all the things you need to do. Strip the fatty fingerprints off, which is your dishwashing liquid, the same as cleaning a dish. And it's also safe for marble and safe for other precious areas on the yacht. All our glass, we use vinegar. And then you've got bicarb soda that you can use to sort of get into the harder lime scale and things. And then the other thing that we moved towards was, you know, we're on yachts, we have a great tendency of cleaning something that's already clean over and over again, because it's just kind of what we do, which is fine. But there's some really great things out there that are chemical free. And one of the ones we used was called Enyo cloths, which works on a static. They're chemical-free cloths, and I know there's a lot of other e-cloths and things out there as well, but we had these in our caddies, and actually when the guests were on board, morning wipe downs were so much faster. You literally just put them into your hands and you rub the static, and then it just kind of collects all the dust as you go. So there's definitely products out there, but it's just changing your mindset. And it was just that one little thing, that one little visit and discussion with the homeopath where I thought, oh, wow, okay, so if my body's reacting this way, what are the rest of us doing and flushing down the sink?
Yeah, and I'm sure anyone who's listening to this might be going out to test how fire retardant their bodies are.
I just need to go, oh my God. Oh my gosh. Apart from the fact that I actually want to take Tash back a few years and test her, like see how close I can get a naked flame. I'm sorry, but I don't want to, because you're brilliant, Tash, and I love you. I am just making a list of things that Tash has just mentioned, because I really think we should get all this up online if we can do it through Burgess Manage and put out a document for people to just check against, and we'll try and get some of those products and names up there. And yeah, I just wanted to sort of take it on from that. And there are clearly so many things that exist in the natural sphere already: the bicarb, the vinegar, static cloth, and so on and so forth. There are now some really good companies that have picked this up and are working in this sector and getting some real traction with the yachts as well, not just with the commercial side of things, but with yachts. And I think where one boat or one team has tried something and found its work, that word of mouth recommendation is so important, because actually you don't think you have time to try one thing, then try another thing, then try another thing. I mean, we all do it at home, right? It's the same. We're doing it on a smaller scale and then a less impressive scale at home, but we just want the products that work. So talking to friends and colleagues, your crews on other boats, finding out what they're using and what hasn't worked is super important. We've been talking to 3 companies that are getting some great reviews at the moment, and we don't often name check stuff, but this is such an important one that I think it's just critical we start getting names out there and mentioning them and seeing how other people are finding them. EcoStore, a New Zealand company that started in the domestic market, have now developed a whole yacht and marine side of the business, and they've got a supply chain through the Netherlands. They are really taking off at the moment. I think increasing numbers of boats, big and small, are taking their products on board, and they're doing everything from a boat wash through to the interior products. And they're also doing it in terms of, the big bottles you can bring on board and then refill into smaller bottles you can take around the boat. The same with Hepburn Biocare. They've been doing some great work for years and years in the commercial side and are on many of the cruise liners as well. And they've got their own wastewater treatment system, which I think they've modified for yachts. So that's another one we should look into and get onto that list. All 3 of those have supply bases in the Med and worldwide for Hepburn as well. So there are some brands out there that are doing some great stuff, and I think are developing some real traction based on feedback we've got so far.
Do they supply products for, because having spoken to Alex, it looks like the deck cleaning area is maybe that we should be focusing on. Do they provide products for the deck cleaning as well as the interior?
Yeah, there are some of those companies that do have, I think they may just call it boat wash. There's clearly another sort of loop they have to get through in terms of making sure they're paint safe, for want of a more technical term. Products that work with the paint that is being put on the yachts is clearly critical, vitally important, but it works both ways. This product is running straight off the side of the boat into the water, but it also has to protect the hull, because we know paint jobs don't come quick, cheap or easy. So I know there are conversations being had with the paint suppliers at the moment. And a quick search, I've just ran back to websites as I was talking, and yes, there are biological cleaners for teak as well, and I will put my hand up and say I have not tried them, but they do exist. And I know Alex, Elliott, Tash aren't long off the boats, but this is a market that is developing really quickly now. This technology is moving on all the time. Biological cleaning agents, while they may not be necessarily 100% safe in terms of what's going into the water, they are not hard chemicals, and they do a good job. And I think in many instances actually will do a better jobs in terms of potentially pipe maintenance and so on and so forth. Elliott's probably raising an eyebrow now too, but if you can get biological cleaning agents through, then it's a natural process from start to finish. It's not a chemical process in the same way. And I know there are good results coming out of some of those products.
And I think you make a good point. It is an area in the industry that's growing and developing, and new products are coming out all the time. So as a yachting community, we're all going to be trialing different products. So if we can all talk to each other, share, which products work well, which don't, then hopefully we can all come together and have that list that we've been talking about of good products and where they're available.
Yeah, the market as I said, the market, the technology is moving on constantly. The demand is higher, awareness is growing. It is all moving in the right direction. But what will really make the difference now is also demand from the bottom up, demand coming from the people using the products and needing results really quickly. We are in the process of gathering sort of references from boats in the managed fleet. We've gone to the companies and said, who are you? Who are you supplying products to in our managed fleets that we can actually refer to and get those up online as well, perhaps through the Burgess managed system, so that we can share firsthand what is working and who's finding those products. And I think, as we said at the start, as soon as you have a personal recommendation, you'll take it that bit more seriously.
And awareness as well, because I have to say that with every chat that we've had as a group, there has been at least one piece of information, and we all know what today's one is, that has stunned me and I knew nothing about. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. So it's just raising awareness of the issues of the damage that some of these products or chemicals can do. And, some of the solutions that are out there, and, talking to the crew and asking for feedback and engaging, and, all of us coming together as a community and sharing the knowledge that we're building.
And as we have done with other podcasts, I think it's important to say, we don't want to victimize our own industry. Like, this is all, a lot of this is just what happens on a daily basis. Dealing with black water and what it is just a fact of life. It's just that there are different ways of handling it ashore to being at sea, where it is a much more direct impact. And the same with grey water as well. It is just what we have to deal with in this industry. It's not abnormal. It's not that, we're setting ourselves up to say the yachting industry is the worst at what it does. It's just what we all have to deal with in terms of lightening our impact.
Yeah, of course. I mean, cleaning products, we all use those at home, and the products that we use at home are causing probably as much damage. I guess it's just the volume that's being used on board yachts is far greater than. It's not saying I don't clean my house as much as a yacht cleans, but
I don't.
You know what I'm saying.
I don't.
I don't want to get that reputation. Okay, well, I think, again, a lot of information to think about, and passing over to you, the crew. If you have any suggestions, if you've tried any of these products, if you have any feedback, then do get in touch on our Instagram at Burgess Yacht Crew. Or actually, is there an email address they can use for the Burgess Blue Oceans team?
There is one. It's blueoceans@burgessyachts.com. It's on the website under the Blue Ocean section. It's lengthy, blueoceans@burgessyachts.com, but that goes to a whole team of people like Eva, like me. We can check in with Tash and Alex and Elliott and the other guys and girls who've been on the boats. But yeah, we just love to hear from people in terms of what is working, what isn't working, and what we can do to help share, disseminate that information and raise awareness. We're here to try and help everyone on board. So do get in touch. Yes, please.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for another eye-opening chat, and look forward to the next one. Thanks, everyone.